I'm Liz Forbliss, and this is Currents. A deadly day in the Middle East ahead of Pope Benedict's trip to Lebanon.
Lebanon is, I think, different. It has the highest percentage of Christians in the Middle East, so I'm hoping that things will be different there.
Plus, the Pakistani Christian girl accused of blasphemy gives her side of the story. And remembering those lost on September 11th.
Tonight is a very special night, especially here in Bay Ridge, because we truly suffered a great wound when it came to the 9/11 attacks.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us. The Vatican says Pope Benedict's trip to Lebanon is still set for Friday despite violent uprisings in the past 24 hours against U.S. embassies in the Middle East. America's ambassador to Libya, J. Christopher Stevens, was among those killed in a rocket-propelled grenade assault on the U.S. consulate in Benghazi. 3 other Americans, all State Department staffers, also died in the attack. Stevens is the first U.S. ambassador killed in the line of duty since 1979. Meanwhile, in Cairo, a mob of protesters tore the American flag from the U.S. Embassy. Initial reports said the violence in Egypt and Libya was sparked by the online release of a film mocking Islam and depicting the Prophet Muhammad as a child molester, womanizer, and ruthless killer. In a statement, Vatican spokesman Father Federico Lombardi says that, quote, unjustified offense and provocations against Muslim sensibilities are once again evident. Lombardi says the result is unacceptable violence. But U.S. officials now suspect the violence, particularly in Libya, may have been intended to coincide with the anniversary of the September 11th attacks rather than as protests to the controversial film. And preparations continue for the Pope's trip to Lebanon. He's due to arrive in Beirut on Friday. For a better understanding of the situation in the Middle East, I spoke earlier with Father Elias Mallon. He's chairperson of Catholic-Muslim Dialogue for the Archdiocese of New York. Father, we wake this morning to news of this terrible attack against our embassy in Libya, the death of Ambassador Stevens and 3 other Americans, and of course our hearts go out to the families of the victims. Were you at all, what is your initial reaction to these horrible attacks and the reasons for the attacks, which was the anti-Islamic film trailer that was being portrayed on YouTube?
Yeah. The first thing I think is, here we go again, that somebody, for whatever reasons, most of the time I can't understand them, has done something stupid and generally unnecessary. I mean, sometimes there are things that you have to do that make people unhappy. But like burning the Quran and coming out with a film like this, like, I don't understand why.
The U.S. government obviously has taken a lot of action to protect our embassies and our diplomats abroad. And in keeping with that, President Obama and Secretary Clinton coming out and saying, obviously, that there is no excuse for this attack, echoing your sentiment, and also saying that, of course, this is just a small group of extremists, and this does not reflect the Libya and the U.S. relations that we've been trying so hard to build since last year. Is this indicative not only of the politics, but of the interreligious type of dynamic that's going on over in Libya?
There's, I don't think, much going on in terms of interreligious dialogue in Libya. Because the Christian presence there would mostly be expatriates, and I'm not sure there is much of an indigenous Christian population, unlike Egypt, where 10% of the population is Christian. But it's sort of the shadow side of interreligious dialogue, that there are some people for whom interreligious dialogue is by definition evil. It's selling out, and which of course it's not. And so, I mean, no person engaged in interreligious dialogue would approve of a movie like that. Muslims hold the Prophet in almost greater esteem than Christians would hold Jesus. Now, they don't think Muhammad is God. They don't believe that. But yet, the intense,
but they have a profound reverence.
Love and reverence for the Prophet is very, very strong. And so to do that, I mean, people much more innocently have gotten into trouble for saying things about the prophet that were more in terms of academic, whereas this is a deliberate attempt.
And Father, you mentioned earlier that there is the threat that this could spread. Historically, we have seen this type of viral activity based on one specific incident, which of course calls to mind now that our Pope will be visiting Lebanon at the end of this week. And his mission obviously is one of peace and one to create a discourse among interreligious faiths. But now this presents an issue of safety. If we can't safeguard a U.S. facility that is so heavily occupied with soldiers and government presence, how do we safeguard our religious institutions, Catholic churches, Christian churches?
It all depends where you are. It seems like in Iraq, there's no way you can protect them. They're open targets. In Syria, they're just one of many targets, but that's still a target. Lebanon is, I think, different. It has the highest percentage of Christians in the Middle East. The relationship between the Maronites and Hezbollah is fairly good. So I'm hoping that things will be different there.
When you think about the discourse that is going to happen actually right now in the Middle East with Pope Benedict visiting, what are you hoping to hear? What impact can Pope Benedict's visit have in a region that, while they are, as you just mentioned, enjoying some kind of community, there's still so much unrest, political and spiritual. What are you hoping to hear?
Well, I just did a little blog article for America Magazine. It should be on this week. And I said that in terms of Catholic theology and ecumenical dialogue, they always talk about the Bishop of Rome as a center of unity, and then they refer to the Gospel of Luke, where Jesus says to Peter, and you in turn will strengthen your brothers. And so in my article I said this thing of unifying and strengthening. It's clearly a visit to Christians. Now, there are all kinds of Christians in the Middle East, all different kinds of Catholic Christians in the Middle East, not just Latin Catholics. There's Latin, there's Maronite, there's Syriac, there's Armenian. In fact, I checked it out. In Aleppo, in Syria, there are 5 Catholic bishops of different Eastern Rite churches. One of the things that was a topic at the Synod is it's very easy, they use the word denominationalism.
Yes.
And so the Syriac Catholics, they can end up thinking just about their own group. And the Maronites just about their own, and the Armenians about their own. We can't do that anymore, especially in a crisis like this in the Middle East. Christians have to realize that the fate of one of the churches is the fate of all of the churches. And then in addition, there are the Orthodox churches. I tend to think the relationship between the Catholics and Orthodox in the Middle East is pretty good. But this is a time where things can change. And one of the things that I'm hoping that the Pope does is call the Christians to a unity that's really necessary for survival, and then to encourage them.
Okay, Father, thank you so much. As I said, there's never enough time to discuss a topic like this, but I do appreciate your insight and perspective, and certainly have you back.
Okay, well, thank you very much. I'm glad to be able to do it.
You're very welcome. And please be sure to tune in to NET for special live coverage of the Pope's journey to Lebanon beginning this Friday at 11 a.m. Don't go anywhere. There's more Currents ahead. The day's headlines next. Welcome back to Currents. I'm Liz Faublas. Despite the deadly violence elsewhere in the Middle East, Christians and Muslims in Beirut came together for a prayer vigil Wednesday night, invoking the protection of God and the Virgin Mary over the Pope's visit. 4 processions of young people converged on the Garden of Mary in Beirut's Museum Square. The theme of the vigil, Together Around Mary, Together in Peace, Love, Freedom, and Security. Pope Benedict will be in Lebanon for 3 days, the first visit by a pope since John Paul II visited in 1997. And as we hear from Rome Reports, Benedict's schedule is packed full.
15 years ago, John Paul II visited Lebanon. Now his predecessor will pay a visit. Next week, Benedict XVI will be in the heart of the Middle East to encourage Christians who are suffering and facing discrimination. The visit will also be an opportunity to promote coexistence by strengthening ties with the Muslim communities. As a way to prepare and keep track of his visit, a website was launched in French, Arabic, English, and Italian. The website will also include the Pope's speeches, which without a doubt will focus on the current instability in the Middle East.
Continua a seguire con apprensione I tragici crescenti episodi di violenza in Siria, con la triste sequenza di morti e feriti, anche tra i civili, e un ingente numero di sfollati interni e di rifugiati nei paesi limitrofi.
The Pope will be in Lebanon for 3 very intense days. On Friday the 14th, he'll visit St. Paul's Basilica to sign the apostolic exhortation that was developed after the Synod on the Middle East. The document, of course, focuses on Christians who live in that part of the world. On the morning of Saturday, September the 15th, the Pope will have meetings with local political authorities. He'll also meet with key leaders of the Muslim community who have actually said that the Pope's visit will be very important for them as well. Benedict XVI will then have lunch with bishops of Lebanon, followed by a meeting with a youth group. Sunday morning, the Pope will celebrate Mass in Beirut. That's when the Pope will officially present the signed apostolic exhortation. Before heading back to Rome in the afternoon, the Pope will then preside over an ecumenical gathering in the Syrian Catholic Patriarchate.
Then back here in the U.S., as 3 convicts await execution in Pennsylvania, Philadelphia's Archbishop Charles Chaput is saying stop. In his weekly columns, Archbishop Chaput calls for an end to the death penalty. Chaput argues that capital punishment simply doesn't work. He says answering violence with violence harms everyone in society and heals no one. The Archbishop says that even justly convicted murderers retain their God-given dignity as human beings, and executions should have no place in our public life. U.S. bishops have launched a new outreach to Spanish-speaking Americans. The U.S. Bishops' Conference has set up a Spanish-language Facebook page. One of the first features is an essay on Mother Teresa's missionary work in Latin America. The bishops already have an English-language Facebook page, so they also tweet in both English and Spanish. According to the Bishops' Conference, Hispanics make up 40% of U.S. Catholics and 50% of Catholics under the age of 25. And here in Brooklyn, a man detectives are calling the Penguin is in custody and charged with burglarizing 3 locations, including a parish in Bedford-Stuyvesant. Sources tell the New York Post that the suspect confessed to stealing a laptop, a camcorder, and other electronics from St. John the Baptist Catholic Church on Lewis Avenue. The man is also charged with robbing a Baptist church and a home care attendance center. Police dubbed him the Penguin because of his waddle. The man was arrested after police noticed he had the same walk as the thief in a surveillance video. Stay tuned. There's more currents ahead. Coming up, amid accusations of blasphemy, a Pakistani Christian girl is happy to be home. Welcome back. I'm Liz Faublas. On a night when turmoil over religion is dominating our news, an update on a Pakistani Christian girl who has been living a nightmare. She was accused of burning the pages of the Quran, arrested and held for 3 weeks, and now is free on bail but in hiding with her family. The frightened girl spoke with CNN's Reza Saya.
In a span of roughly 3 weeks, 14-year-old Rimsha Masih was arrested, accused of blasphemy, locked up in an adult jail, covered up and moved around by gangs of armed police officers, and finally whisked away to an awaiting helicopter and reunited with her family after a judge granted her bail. It's little surprise Rimsha says she's relieved to be surrounded by familiar faces again. That's Rimsha's voice saying she's happy, talking publicly for the first time since her arrest. She spoke to us by phone from a place she and her family are using to hide out after an ordeal that still has her terrified.
Yes, I'm scared. I'm scared someone might kill me. I'm scared of anyone who might kill us.
That fear came last month here in Rimsha's neighborhood when she was suddenly accused of burning pages of the Quran, a violation of Pakistan's blasphemy law punishable by life in prison. Rimsha is Christian. Her lawyers say she was set up by a neighbor she didn't get along with and a local Muslim cleric who wanted to scare away Christian families from the neighborhood. No, Rimsha said when we asked her if she burned pages of the Quran. Rimsha's father, a house painter who takes home just dollars a day, said no one in his family would dare damage the Quran. We respect the Quran, just like the Bible, Rimsha's father told us. We couldn't imagine committing blasphemy, let alone actually doing it. Our children would never do this either. These are false accusations. Rimsha's lawyer says several aid groups have offered to give her and her family a home away from Pakistan. For now, Rimsha says she's not going anywhere.
I won't leave my country because I love it. I love Pakistan and I won't ever leave my country.
On the phone, Rimsha sounded like a normal Pakistani teenager, healthy, shy, and clearly a little nervous. She says she's still willing to come back and live in this neighborhood if she's sure no one's going to hurt her. In the meantime, the cleric accused of framing her is in jail. Rimsha's lawyers are hoping if he's charged, prosecutors will drop the case against Rimsha.
And that report from CNN's Reza Sayah. Stay tuned, more currents after the break. When we return 11 years later, remembering loved ones lost on September 11th.
Thank you to all of you, my fellow Americans, for being here to remember the events that shook this city, this state, and this nation 11 years ago.
And welcome back. I'm Liz Faublas. Big turnouts on Tuesday night at two memorial services hosted by State Senator Martin Golden to remember those lost in the terrorist attacks on September 11th, 2001. Well, we headed to the 69th Street Pier in Bay Ridge for the second of the two ceremonies, which included inspiring speakers, patriotic music, and solemn prayer.
Lord, we need a healing wind to blow across our hearts, a gentle wisp from your lips to sheathe the aching parts. Every autumn is still the same since that sorrow-filled September. Our hearts are full of bitter holes that bleed when we remember.
Well, tonight is a very special night, especially here in Bay Ridge, because we truly suffered a great wound when it came to the 9/11 attacks. These were our brothers, our sisters, fathers, mothers, friends, co-workers, everything.
Thank you to all of you, my fellow Americans, for being here to remember the events that shook this city, this state, and this nation 11 years ago today.
Well, this is my hometown, and plus we do have that awesome view of the World Trade Center, which I remember as a boy. And I gotta tell you, each day going to work, I miss those towers. It was like a family member.
On 9/11, 2 planes crashed into those buildings. My son raced down there. He was working out a 4-engine right around the corner down in Front Street. I raced over there, and I knew he was there. His car was outside quarters. I looked into the firehouse on Front Street, and all the shoes were laying there, and all the rigs were gone. And both towers had just fallen, and I was, heartbroken. Yeah, I thought he was dead. He was.
We want to make sure that we never, ever forget that terrible, terrible event. And today was really, truly a blessing, because not only do we have the privilege of having Jimmy Ritchie's here and so many people attend, but when we released the balloons into the air, it is the first time those balloons went right over the site of 9/11.
It's very powerful, and it's always going to be powerful. It's never going to go away, and I'm glad it's not. It's good that we can step back and think about it, pray about it, and maybe make a deeper commitment to be people of justice and peace. That was the reminder that we
we talked about a lot with our own people.
So it brings back memories. It's going to continue to bring back those memories. We're never going to let this happen again in this nation, and that's what we're going to do, is to keep to remember and to have our history for many, many generations to come, to let our children know and our families and in our educational process to make sure that a tragedy like this never befalls this great nation again.
My hope is that we continue to teach and we continue to share and to make sure that those people aren't ever forgotten, and that we find a way to bring people together to make, to only bring positive change in the world.
God bless the
And that was Sergeant Louis Licalzi of the 344th Combat Support Hospital. For all of us here at Currents, I'm Liz Faublis. We leave you tonight with more from Sergeant Licalzi. Thank you for watching and have a good night.
From the lakes of Minnesota to the hills of Tennessee, across the plains of Texas, from sea to shining sea, from Detroit down to Houston and New York to LA, well, there's pride in every American heart, and it's time we stand and say that I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free, and I won't forget the ones who died, who gave that right to me, and I gladly stand up next to you and defend her still today, 'cause there ain't no doubt I love this land. God bless the USA. And I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free, and I won't forget the ones who died, who gave that right to me, and I gladly stand up next to you and defend her still today, 'cause there ain't no doubt I love this land. God bless the USA.
Thank you, Sergeant. Thank you, everybody. God bless America.